the rest of John's group?
I don't know who's going to be watching. I guess we'll see.
All right, we're live now. Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is Guro Pena for FMA Discussion, and tonight we have Guro Angelo Garcia. Okay.
I think you just promoted me there.
Oops.
That's fine. That's fine. All right. Feel the promotion.
Okay. So yeah. Um, so for those who are watching, please tell us where you're watching from, and please hit the like button and the heart button. If you have any question with Angelo, please let us know. And I mean, for those who don't know yet, you can basically get this video live from Dean Franco's page, and I'm going to share it to FMA discussion and to my wall as well. Okay. While I'm doing that, good evening, Angelo. I'm so glad that you managed to make this interview. I know we didn't have a test run. Okay, we're basically like just made you get into the live interview immediately. But I'm so glad that you managed to do it.
Sure, I'm glad we're doing this. It's working so far, so we're flying by the seat of our pants. It doesn't look like there's any technical issues right now, just some delays. So
Yes, yes, and that's the reason why we normally have the test run, to be able to sort out all the technical issues. Right. So we do have Felix Reyes from Texas and Paul Rachelis as well. Hi, guys. Okay.
hello.
Thank you for tuning in, and of course Jess from San Pedro Laguna, Philippines, a good friend of mine. Hi, Jess. Okay. All right. So let's start. Um, let's start with your journey. Basically, as a sort of like introduction to everybody, how did you get into martial arts in general, and eventually into FMA? And what were your inspirations?
So let's see. So I have to talk about my upbringing. To really talk about martial arts as a whole, right? So I'm the son of a retired ambassador, Philippine ambassador. She retired earlier this year, and I moved around my whole life. So I was always the new kid on the block. And, this was a great experience because I got to learn about different cultures and meet different people, living in a new country every 2-3 years. But, as you know, young kids can be mean. And so
Mhm.
she felt it was important for me to learn some kind of self-defense and, some kind of martial art. So, and it comes not without any evidence. I was getting bullied as a kid, because I was the new kid in my early childhood. So when we moved to South Korea, I'll take a step back. Actually, I lived in South Africa, where this was where I did my first martial art, which was karate, and it was towards the end of my time there. All my school bullies were in the same karate class as me, so my mom pulled me out. Yeah. I forgot what style of karate it was, but anyway, we moved forward, and I moved from South Africa to South Korea, and I started doing Taekwondo there. Okay, and so you're in South Korea, you're not going to go learn capoeira. You're going to learn. I mean, there's phenomenal capoeira practitioners there, I'm sure, but you go into a country where they specialize in an art. You do Taekwondo. So my mom put me in, and I spent moving from South Korea to the Philippines, and then I would say I spent about somewhere in the ballpark of 8 years doing Taekwondo. Okay, so that was my early childhood development as a martial artist. And what were my key influences? I mean, martial arts movies as a kid. That's always an inspiration, I think, for everyone.
Yeah.
You grow up watching Bruce Lee, you grow up watching Chuck Norris,
Yeah.
and everyone in between. And so after that, I actually didn't touch martial arts for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I briefly continued doing Taekwondo when I lived in Egypt for about half a year, but I didn't. I reached third dan under the Kukyuan, so that was kind of cool. But after that, I didn't touch it until I moved to Israel for college. Now, this was an interesting experience because I had friends that were really into Krav Maga, right? And I said, you know what? I'm pretty sure there's a martial art from the Philippines too, because they were very, nationalistic. They were very proud of their martial art from Israel. This Krav Maga, right? They said it was really effective, and I said, you know what? We've got something too. I just can't remember what it's called.
Okay.
So, I remember there was something in the Philippines, and so this was 2007, 2008. Okay, and I ended up. We're getting there. We're getting there to the shirt. I'll talk about the shirt, John. So, I found myself at a cultural exhibition event where there was an Arnis demonstration. Okay, and it happened to be Master John Escodero and a few of his students. And I said, "Wow, that's really awesome. I'm really hooked on this." There was a lot of, high speed, swinging of sticks. What is that? Oh, it's Arnis. Okay, I'll check it out. And so, I got the business card, and so a month later, I had a lot of stuff going on that month, and a month later, I showed up to the class. Now, I showed up 45 minutes late to a 2-hour class.
Oh, okay.
On a Friday morning. The weekend in Israel is Friday and Saturday, so Thursday night, the night you go out. So I was out till 6 a.m. So I showed up 45 minutes late, still under the influence of alcohol, to Master John Escodero's class, and I had a T-shirt that said, "My pen is huge." Right? So,
Okay.
This is a great way to make a first impression.
It's like a pickup line, man.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Anyway, I was a dumb 19-year-old, so what can I say? And, he gave me an exercise to work on. It was, I remember it very distinctly. It's, you got your feet together and you turn your hips and you're doing your diagonals to, to isolate your core. And I got bored with that because, I was still hungover. And so I was watching his general class, and I turned to him. He was showing some technique, and I said, "That's not going to work." Out loud, I said that.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
And I was, towards the end of the class, I was like, "That's not going to work," And he shows me that it does work. I recall throwing a roundhouse kick at him to test the technique. And I don't remember the specific technique, but he scooped my leg like this, right? Sweeped it with his right leg, and then he punched me in the crotch when I was on the ground. And then I learned that the technique does, in fact, work. There are reversals. That was my first impression. The first lesson in lightning Arnis. And, and that wouldn't be the last time that he'd thrown me to the ground either. There were a few more sessions like that because I was a knucklehead. So that was my lightning Arnis experience initially. I was being a knucklehead and showing up, and he just had to tolerate me for the first few sessions, but I learned very quickly. I became very dedicated to it over time. I was obsessed with it. I would spend hours practicing on my own. After
Mhm.
getting knocked around a few times, you learn, okay, this is legit. And what I'd come to find is that culturally here, that behavior was kind of expected here in Israel,
Mhm.
where people test your technique, although
Yeah.
not the same manner that I did. But I was being a dumb 19-year-old. So anyway, that aside, I spent 2.5 years in Israel training with Master John, and we were training almost daily at a certain point.
Okay.
Uh, and I'd be practicing a couple, like 2-3 hours a day, just training really hard, trying to get the reps in, because he'd imparted to me the whole notion of, the rule of 10,000. If you ever read
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers, you do something, you spend 10,000 hours doing something, that's the road to mastery, and that's
Mhm.
quality hours. So I aspired to reach that 10,000, and I'm still working on it. I don't know if I've hit it. I don't think I'm anywhere near 10,000. I know I'm in the few thousands. That's
Yeah.
where I'm
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still, you know, life gets in the way. So after that, I moved to the Washington D.C. area, and um, you know, I really had no interest in trying any other FMA styles because I was just so hooked on lightning. I went to
Mhm.
seminars, I went to other gyms, and met people, and they're all wonderful people, great systems. But for me, lightning was what I really wanted to do. So
Yeah.
I asked John. I said, "Hey, can I open a club?" And he says, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. Um, Start small." So I started a little club to keep it up. Um, at that time, my hours of training weren't as many because it was just me by myself, and you reach diminishing marginal returns
Yeah.
um, training by yourself without stimulus. But I got reps in. I was still practicing every day. Um, but yeah, that was the birth of the group. I had one student in the park, and then two, and then over time, I found myself in a gym. That's another funny story, which I'll tell you about later. Um, but I figured, since I now had access to different martial arts,
Yeah.
MMA was, MMA had just become really, really popular.
Yeah.
I got into Muay Thai.
Mhm.
Okay, and I did that for a few years. I was actually prepping for, to compete under one of my coaches, Master Danny. Um, and fortunately, or rather, I shouldn't say unfortunately. I should say my career took a different path. I got into grad school,
Yeah.
and I didn't have as much time to spend, prepping to compete or anything, because they wanted me on the fight team. So I said, you know what, I'll come in and I'll spar with you guys on occasion, and that's it. So I just kept it up. I was a sparring partner for the fight team on the Muay Thai team.
Mhm.
Uh, did that for a few years, and then after my master's, I continued doing Muay Thai and running my club at the same time. Concurrent with that, I did some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
All right.
I should say I attended Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. Saying that I actually do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu implies that I'm actually okay at it,
Yeah.
which is not the case. I can sprawl. I can shrimp. That's about it. Um,
Okay.
you know, I can shrimp pretty good. The
Well, at
Yeah,
least you got the very basics.
I got the two moves, right? Yeah. Yeah. So then my other arts that I got into after that, I really wanted to pursue Krav Maga because, I talked about my time living in Israel, and I was just doing Arnis, and I thought to myself, I've all these contacts in the Krav Maga community. It's kind of silly that I never learned Krav Maga living in
Yeah.
Israel. So I got in touch with my now coach, Pavel Schreier, and we started doing Krav Maga training, and I got to learn a great deal about it, how it works, and ultimately that it's more of a mindset rather than a system necessarily.
Yeah, I think
Right?
that's also what I gathered about Krav Maga. I mean, I'm speaking to different instructors who are my friends as well. They said it's really more of a mindset. Yeah,
It's a mindset where the techniques tend to be, I don't want to say superfluous, but more a means to an end,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because it's less important where the technique originates from, and what's more important is getting the desired result. It's a military combative system
Yeah,
to begin.
okay, yeah.
Um, and that's something I enjoy. And then I got into, a good friend, John Benarski, got me into Piper, which, I post videos about it all the time. It's a South African knife system, which originates from the Cape Flats region
Hmm.
of South Africa, and is, it's a deadly art ambush system
Yeah.
used by criminals
Mm,
to,
mm,
you know, and
yeah,
and it's a great criminal simulation system because you're able to study how a nefarious actor would move.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the
Ah,
yeah, and then I got into a little bit of modified tapado through him as well,
through him.
uh,
Yeah.
by way of Nene Tortal. Um, so that's been an interesting journey. I've not been practicing as of late, but it's certainly, um, for me, it's opened my eyes to a lot of the different movements that are possible.
Hmm.
And yeah, so in a nutshell, that's my long-winded spiel of what arts have I gone through, and little stories in between.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you for basically sharing us how you got into martial arts. And I know, like, you didn't grow up in the Philippines. You're a Filipino. Basically, you grew up in the states, or actually in different areas. So, finding your own way, finding your way to FMA, the way you did it, it's very unique. So, and as I said, thank you for sharing it. Before I throw my questions, let's say, well, okay, well, yeah, let's say hello to Master John as well, to Guy as well, and to Clive. Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so once again, if you got any questions, please, you can post it here in the comment section, and please hit the heart button or the like button. And also, I would like to remind you, we do have the FMA Discussion channel in YouTube. Please check us there as well. Okay. What were the things that you started with FMA before you did Muay Thai? So, what were the things, attributes, mindset that you managed to bring from learning lightning to Muay Thai?
So I would say, um, we can look at it through a number of different ways. The lightning mechanics are actually the interesting thing to look at. Because lightning in general is an impact oriented system where, your core rotation is the most important thing, right?
Mhm.
It lends itself to powering the kicks and the punches,
Yeah.
right? So let's look at the mechanics first. In order to fire a roundhouse kick, you've got to, there's some change, some changes in the footwork, but to fire a roundhouse kick, you've got to step your lead foot 45 degrees out, and then snap your hip over to fire it, and then you do an arcing motion with your knee, or
you bring your knee up, yeah.
You bring your knee up and you arc it over, and then follow through to your target, right?
Yeah.
I would say that twitch is important. Throwing the punches, the overhands, those tend to require similar mechanics as the lightning, some of the lightning espada daga movements. Okay, I'll give you an example. So when you fire a backhand diagonal in lightning, you've got your right leg forward, you've got your left leg back. You're rotating your hip inward, right? Your knee starts going, your left knee goes towards your right knee. And your checking hand and your knife, goes forward, okay, to thrust. That's the same mechanic as firing across.
Yeah.
Fundamentally. I mean, you're pushing off your...
Yes. Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's the same thing. I mean, you're going to have to change how you're going to have to raise your shoulder, and, those are the nuances that are unique to empty hand that would not be available. But fundamentally, that's an exaggeration of it. That's a lot of the stuff from lightning that I carried over. Timing wise, so this is something that's been sort of emphasized by weapon systems. Something I've observed is that, and I've long discussions with John about this, Master John Escodero. The ranges dictate the number of strikes that you can execute in contact, right? So if you're in Largo, right, then you're going to make contact maybe with one strike, right? And so that'll determine what repertoire you're using at that range, right? And it's all very fluid. If you're in the medium range, maybe you get one or two. It'll be an exchange, strike, then counter, or deflection. When you get even closer, then it goes into barrages of 3 and up, and you either have to get out of there or you gotta stick to them, right? And that's what you start seeing in the clinches.
Yep.
Right. So this is more of a conceptual thing, but I've found it to be consistent across fighting in general, where the range dictates the amount of contact that takes place in an engagement. And again, the range is fluid. It's not, you don't hang out there and go, oh, we're in medium range, so now I'm dictating that we fight in medium range. We're passing through a range. You're passing through them. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. With the, it's actually good that you managed to clear out the amount of strikes you can do in across ranges, because the distance you have from your opponent would basically also dictate, and the way he's pressing on you would dictate a lot of your possibilities as well. How many strikes can you do? What are the strikes that you can do? And basically how you try to stick inside, or basically want to play outside of him. So it does have a lot of impact on your own game. So, and it's nice that you managed to draw certain similarities between lightning, the way you move in lightning, and to also with Muay Thai. Okay, and you managed to bring some aspects across it. Yeah.
It's the impact. It's the maximum power generation. It's not about making contact for the point. It's about getting that destructive effect. You're trying to generate that kind of blow. There's some differences. Obviously, you can't afford to absorb shots with weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in Muay Thai, it's about toughening your body. And I think that's an important thing to do, but I wouldn't recommend wailing on yourself with sticks, or having someone wail on you with sticks to condition yourself. This isn't a North Korean promotional or national demonstration. It's not that. I'm sure you've been seeing that getting thrown around.
Yeah. Okay, so how is it training with Master John Escodero? Yeah, because you're training with two Johns. I'm gonna go with John Escodero first.
Sure. Master John Escodero is very interesting to train with. He trains for each athlete's predispositions.
Okay.
And their attributes, basically. And he's got goals in mind for them. He has very, very detailed notes that he takes on each student. He's shown me his progress sheets, and I'm like, wow, that's where I'm at. That's cool. We'll nerd out about that stuff. We actually sit and go through his notes fairly regularly. But he's very methodical about it. If he finds that an individual is a more natural athlete, for example, he'll focus on, getting them to execute more. Whereas if a person needs to develop more coordination, he'll focus on that. It's very, very methodical to the individual. He teaches everyone a little differently. For me, I don't consider myself a natural athlete, so I just do stuff. He'll make me work on, in the early stages, it was just getting me to get used to bracing for impact, for the byongs and the cross blocks, high power blocks, and getting me used to generating power with an extension to my body. For some people, it comes really naturally. I get to jump in with one of his students, Benny, who's got cannons for arms, man. We don't have to worry about his power generation. But a lot of it is, a lot of what John will do with someone like that, or other athletes that he works with, is he'll start focusing their control, right? So, and it's not about curbing the power. He wants to keep that as much as possible, right? Yeah. It's more about developing the accuracy and the timing. Getting them used to relaxing. So, how is it working with John? I would say it varies from person to person. For me, it's very technical. I'm more of a I'm more of an analytical mind when it comes to these things. Probably just because of my background. I generally analytical. So he presents the techniques to me in such a fashion. He'll also communicate it in a way that you'll understand. That's the other thing.
Actually, it's exactly good that you managed to point to see even that John addresses his students differently or slightly differently from each other, depending on their capability to absorb the lesson, and also depending also on their attributes as well. So
I've been able to watch him work with very different students over the years, so I get to see that.
How long have you been training with Master John?
13 years.
13 years. Yes, still along. You were there at the beginning of the Oh no, near the
That's
beginning of the LSAI group. Yeah, in Israel.
yeah. I was there, and I was running his club in the States, and as a result, it's also interesting because I hadn't had the, it's both a positive and a negative that,
Mm-hmm.
I would see him like once a year, twice a year, and I would
Yeah.
get to see the change in his methodology over time, over the
Mm-hmm.
years. Whereas if you're there the whole time, you don't see the change. You just kind of observe the flow as it
Yeah.
happens, and it's happening to you. Whereas, I'll see something and be like, "That's different. You're teaching that technique a little different, not in a way that is negative, but in a fashion that is more efficient." You know, his response is, "Well, I've been teaching this technique to a lot more people now." Um, so it's also great to see that that development of how the curriculum's being approached
Mm.
over time.
Yeah. And I guess at one point he's basically learning from his experience teaching different people as well. Specifically, um, people who train in FMAs in lightning outside the Philippines, because there's a big difference the way you teach Filipinos and non-Filipinos FMA. Um,
There's a big difference teaching Filipinos, non-Filipinos, and then you would have to subdivide who these non-Filipinos are based on their culture,
yeah, as well. That's true.
and what their needs are. If you're trying to, take for example, um, we're teaching in the United States. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you, right. In my experience, Americans are very polite and will, listen to the teacher and do as instructed. Whereas Israelis will challenge every single point that you bring up,
All right.
and they need to have the answer immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a positive or negative thing. This is a unique
It
cultural
is. It
idiosyncrasy.
is. Yeah. It is what it is.
It is what it is. This is how it is. You
Mm.
know, um, and in Filipino culture, that would be considered rude,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To interrupt
It
the
is
teacher,
very. Yeah.
to tell him that the technique doesn't work and then try to kick him. That's rude. Why on earth would you do that? You tell,
Yeah.
if someone did that to
Yeah.
me, I would kick him I would punch him in the crotch. At this age, I was 19. I was stupid. It goes back to that. And so I think he's able to teach the different cultures as well. So that's the other thing. What are the needs of those athletes, of those fighters,
Yeah.
right? So it's but he's very methodical, like I said.
Yeah. Actually, I've seen basically some changes as well with the curriculum and the syllabus over the years, and how he's managing to address like um, certain ways how to make things more continuous when it comes to teaching it. So it's not just going to be like, okay, you memorize this. Okay, it basically tries to um, go more into the like, okay, this is the concept behind this. So when you understand the concept, it will make it easier for you to understand the applications as well. So at least when you learn it, you already have that concept context. Makes it easier for you to understand the application. That's how I find it, and it also suits most of my students here in the UK, because here they also ask the question. It's like, why do you do this? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? So although you can say, well, okay, it will be taught to you in time, but at least learn from it. But at least you can manage to actually like tell them at one point. Okay, so this
Here you can't do that.
Yeah.
you can't say you'll learn in time. Like, no, don't tell me that. You tell me now. Okay. So, and it's true. So I'm taking a course right now at Wingate. It's a sports science course with the intent of, with the focus on
Coaching.
martial arts, right?
Yeah.
Martial arts coaching. And, yesterday's quote, going to that point is, when you're teaching a technique, you should be able to explain to your students why they're doing that technique. Not just, oh, well, this is our style, this is how we do it. And not
That's
just,
good.
well, this is my teacher's way he did it, so
Yeah.
this is why we're doing it. That's that's not a reasonable explanation. You have to be able to explain tactically why it's sound. You have to explain, when you can or can't use it. What are the mechanics? Why is it structurally a sound structure?
Yeah.
You really have to approach it from those angles, and so that you're able to reinforce the lesson in your student's mind, all within 3 bullet points.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure.
You don't want to overload them either, right? So
That's the thing. That's the thing. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
you're not giving them a dissertation. This isn't the case.
Yeah, it's like when somebody asked me, explain to me this in one sentence. It's like, what?
But you need to be able to do that because
Exactly. That's true.
you don't want to overload them. And there's an important aspect to it, and this is in my own martial arts development. It's this discovery, right? You have to discover it for yourself. Sparring, through drills, you test things at varying levels of pressure.
Yes.
Without stimulus, with stimulus, what kind of stimulus, and under different conditions. So those are other things that John really harps on, on his students to go through. Yeah, well, he runs the classes that way. So you'll have variations of different drills. So that's, for me, it helped build a framework for how I study the different martial arts as well. So, studying at the Wingate Institute now, I'm looking at it from a mechanics point of view, tactics, and all of this stuff, right? Kinesiology and the biomechanics and all that, all this stuff, right? Okay, so let's take for example the strike number 1 in lightning, right? What are the optimal ways to execute it? Well, the key thing is if you're starting from the feet up, is you want to make sure that the front foot doesn't rotate. You want to maintain an isometric hold, and it should be the rear foot that drops the heel, so that you're turning your hip. You're opening your hips as you fire, right? And you bring your shoulder down. And anyway, and I'm using normal people's speech to describe this motion. Because you don't want to talk to people about the sagittal plane and what angle. That's not how normal people talk.
Yeah, that could be a sleeping pill for some.
Yeah. And I barely remember that stuff anyway. So turn your hips, point your knee here. That's it. Keep your knee pointed forward. Easy coaching cues, right? Like you've got a stick pointing, holding your knee and your ankle in place. And that help. Why do you do that? Well, you need to be rooted, and that's an explanation of why the strike number 1 should be executed in that fashion. As opposed to, this was how my teachers taught me.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
I saw that with some of the Muay Thai I've seen as well, where they're like, well, this is how they taught it to me, but it didn't seem biomechanically sound.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important, especially nowadays, that you'll be able to explain things in a more biomechanic sound way, because otherwise it sometimes it becomes too vague as well. And
Right.
yeah. All right. So let's go to the other John, John Bernardsky.
Other John.
Yeah. How is it training with
Like,
him? What are yeah?
so I'm training Piper and modified Tapata with him. We've been doing a lot of video lessons. He's really, I would say, he's another analytical mind. He is a person I would, I enjoy talking to him about a broad range of subjects because we're both, both break things down and through different frameworks
Mm-hmm.
and analyze them in parts. So when he teaches, the three of us we'll have conference calls where we talk about techniques, and we'll use similar terminology. Oh, here's another important thing, right? Is he and I are working on some terminology for their version of the School of Arms curriculum of Piper Tripwire. So it's how do I put this? The terminology, because it's learned organically, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
challenge is, how do you segment it into sections? How do you take something? Think about old school Filipino martial arts training. Okay, I hit you like this, you hit me like that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you break that down? You can't. Not without really sitting down and looking at it from the bottom up. So that's one
Yeah.
thing that we're trying to, we're discussing right now. So he's broken down some of the elements to preparatory movements
Mm-hmm.
for Piper. Things that he learned and was taught, but as well as some movements that he's playing with.
Yeah.
And similar to that, similarly with Tapado, he's doing a lot of that. A lot of the preparatory movement. He explains things very clearly. Training with him is fun. I enjoy it. I have a general rule: if I'm not having fun, I'm not doing it. So, so I'm having a good time, and I highly recommend anyone who's got an opportunity. If you're looking to train with either of the Johns, do it, because it's a heck of an experience. I'm biased, obviously. But,
And why not?
What's that?
Why not?
Why not?
Oh, okay. We've got a message from Guy here. Share your favorite post-training meals. Okay.
My favorite post-training meal. I
Oh,
enjoy all kinds of different food. Really, it's whatever's next. I inhale food. So I got into powerlifting for a while, and I got really into eating a lot of steak. And
ah,
yeah, that was probably not the best idea because I started getting beefy, and I'm still trying to shake off those pounds because I was reading somewhere that you shouldn't really care about what's on the weight on your scale. You should care about what's on your bar. So I was just packing on the pounds, and the weight was going up on the bar, but so was the scale.
okay. I don't know, Guy. If you're basically like wanting to become a power lifter, well, then try it. Try it. Okay, so um, you've been basically like John's study group leader in DC, right?
In the DC area, yeah. I had
Yeah.
a club in Falls Church, Virginia. So that was a lot of fun. because it's the DC area, you get some very interesting students. I had a lot of, former and current like military and law enforcement types. And, the challenge here is, and I like teaching the classical stuff. I enjoy it. And one thing that I found was that there was this need for them to learn some things that were more applicable to their jobs. Specifically the law enforcement guys that actually asked me, hey, how do I deal with this problem? How do I deal with that problem? Because I was teaching the classical class one day, and so I was teaching them, okay, you take the weapon and you swing it, and then you throw you fire a horizontal to the head. And one of my cop students goes, sir, I can't do that because that goes against the use of force. And I actually lost a student that way. Because you can't do that.
Definitely.
They can't do that. They have to adhere to the use of force. And they're like, look, it'll cross wires for me. Because as soon as I'm holding a baton, under pressure, I'm going to start swinging for the head. Right? And so, I helped, readjust the targeting, but there were just things that he could not do and wasn't comfortable with. And that's fine.
Yes, of course, yeah.
The classical material was very, this is where I started getting into the conversation of, there are elements of the material that are good for self-defense, which is, by the way, a legal term, or, tactical use. But that's a very small subset of the system. And teaching in, these, professionals, these guys, these real badasses, I just hang out with them. Teaching them some stuff, on the side, I learned that, based on their mission profile, there's a lot of stuff they can't use. And
that's true.
So, they might be deterred from doing that. So trying to sell knife murder as tactical for certain, I'll give you an example. There's conversations that I hear. There's discourse about this. The use of the knife, for example, right? If you're pulling it out, you can use it as a deterrent, but chances are, if it's used as an offensive weapon, you're going to kill someone. And I talked to a cop about this, one of my former students, different guy from the guy who was afraid of the baton swinging. And he carried a knife on him, and it was a karambit, if I'm not mistaken, or it was a really lethal looking knife. It would look like something you would call the Doombringer or something like that. He said he carried it,
Zombie apocalypse.
Can you use that knife? And he says to me, I can use this on my very last day on the force, and that's it. If I'm looking to lose my job, I can use it, but I might have to one day.
Fair enough.
And so, they took that line. So, working in the DC area, you get some interesting students for sure. People that are going downrange, people that are even just regular guys, accountants. Very, very interesting area. Lots of law enforcement, lots of military.
All right. So who's handling now the group as you have already moved back in Israel?
So It would be Yemi Omotola. He's
Okay.
handling the group at the moment. So
All right. So anybody who would like to train in lightning scientific in the DC area can just
yes,
basically, yeah,
train with
okay, hit
Yemi.
up Ian.
Yemi
Yeah,
Omotola. Good
yeah.
dude. Yeah. So he's he's been with me since 2012. I want to say it's quite some time. So he's highly capable.
All right. It's nice. It's nice to know that at least somebody's has already taken over of the group as
Oh yeah, and they the remaining students really wanted to keep it alive.
yeah.
Here was the challenge. So when the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
I had to I shut down operations for a while, and we didn't meet for for a really long time until everyone was comfortable with meeting each other and
Yeah.
training face. And at that point we were all kind of rusty, so our group had become quite small to
Okay.
a handful
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah. I think everybody had to rebuild their group at one point.
Yeah, we had to rebuild, and it became more of a sparring group, which was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. I enjoy sparring, but I didn't, understanding that it was such a small group, I was more focused on us sparring more regularly than actually, learning new technique and refining technique. It was really because we were meeting so infrequently.
Okay.
So there was
Yeah.
no point.
It'll be hard. Yes. Mm.
It was hard. It was hard. So we just became a infrequent sparring group. But now I think Yemi and Gang are trying to make it a regular thing.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, especially with the pandemic, you can't find any like continuity with what you're doing, unless
Right.
basically like almost everybody did. You have to go like doing online stuff. But again, it is also like limited. But yeah. So
I think that's going to be the future, right?
yeah.
So you're going to have a hybrid model, a lot like corporations are doing now with
Mm,
the
mm.
hybrid work model.
Yeah.
Um, if you want to have that kind of outreach, you're going to have media involved somehow in supporting
Mm.
your classes. And I think a lot of people are doing a good job with that.
I still do, especially when with my Monday training now, because not everybody in my group has come back to face training. Some of them they're still uh, a little bit careful into coming back, or because circumstances has changed. So, but at least if they can train with a group while I'm running a live face to face, I have my phone. Basically, I'm running a Zoom class as well, so I can give them exercises that is basically in tune with what the whole group is going, but at least but
Do
they
something.
don't have any partner. Yeah, they're doing something. So yeah, so yeah. Um, with the training, is this are there are there any part of your training or your journey in martial arts that you manage to bring uh to your job or to your what you do as a living?
So we talked about this before. I come from a security threat intelligence background. I came from like, physical security, doing corporate security and um, security in general. I'm a security professional, and I'm now doing cyber threat intelligence. So a lot of what I do professionally is identify threats and look at ways to mitigate against threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how to respond to threats. Have standard operating procedures to deal with a particular threat or a hazard as it comes up. So that type of thinking is how I tend to approach my martial arts training, because you have to put things into a realistic context. Okay,
Yeah.
um, Now, what do I mean by this? I think people should realistically create a threat profile of themselves and determine what it is, if they're thinking self-defense. Okay, again, a legal term. There seems to be these fantasies of, single-handedly taking down a group of bad guys, right? Guys, you think about this. Chuck Norris taken down.
Yeah.
Realistically, would you expect that to happen in your real life?
That's a good question.
Right? So, without stepping on too many people's toes or, misquoting some people, what I do is, if you're looking at it from the context of self-defense, think about where you go, what time you go to those places, when you go, right? That's important. How frequently you go, what routes you take, and the types of people that frequent those locations. Okay, and then you can start building out a profile for yourself to determine how likely it is. And now think about your job and the people you're associated with, and your family and the things that they are involved in, and you start building out this idea of, okay, what's my profile? How likely is it that I'm going to get attacked? Okay. Now, if I'm going to the bar, and your behavior is an important aspect of this as well. Of course.
Yeah.
And how you dress and all of these things. And this is not to shame someone or anything like that. But, if you're going to the bar and you're talking smack, okay, at 2 a.m. all the time, there's a high probability you're going to end up in a situation where 7 dudes are trying to beat you up.
Yeah.
It's bound to happen. I generally try to avoid wearing clothes, for example, that invite confrontation. So there are certain brands I avoid, like, you couldn't catch me dead in a tap out shirt because, I feel like it's really, it's 2008. Okay. It's very 2008, but 2, it's just really, in your face. Or a Punisher shirt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be
I never read the comics. I'm not going to wear a Punisher T-shirt because I feel like it would be an injustice to other Punisher fans. In general, you want to avoid that, so you want to keep a low profile. So this is how I tend to think. Make yourself as gray as possible.
As gray as possible, yes. Yeah.
Yes. I'm wearing, so I do Krav Maga, right? And I do some, Muay Thai with my Krav Maga coach, phenomenal boxer, phenomenal kickboxer, Pavel. So I'm wearing his shirt right now. And, that's fine. It's, I like supporting my martial arts club, but it's not.
You would wear that in a pub, would you?
One, I don't go to pubs anymore. I'm married with a kid, and I'm not out at clubs in the morning.
Being a typical dad.
Yeah, I'm a typical dad now. I'm not coming home at 6 a.m. and starting trouble at a martial arts school.
But at least it's good to know you're growing. You're growing up.
I'm maturing. Yeah. See, all of this advice, I should have been giving myself at 19. So you mature, but yeah. So a lot of this is influenced by my background. Do you use a use of force continuum in your classes? Sorry, I'm catching on late.
Hi, Gregory. No worries. Yep. Okay. So yeah.
All right, Gregory. Great question. No, I don't. Why don't I do that? Because I teach a classical system where I'm preserving the art, and I'm not a cop, so I'm not teaching self-defense. That's there's other classes. There is Krav Maga for that, which I hope to eventually teach. So at which point I will probably start considering use of force. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I tend to look at things through a very different lens when it comes to the use of force stuff. I don't touch it because, I'm not I never, wore a uniform. So I'm not going to pretend I'm a ninja. I'm not a badass like that. Toad's just interested in how you may personally look at it. Great, Greg. Yeah, no, I'm very happy to answer that question. Yeah, it's interesting though, because I get to train a lot of call me later. This is Jeremy. All right. Huh. How you doing, Jeremy? So yeah, let's see. What else shall we discuss? I've got. Oh, they're talking to each other. I thought they were talking to me. Like, lost my train of thought. Anyway, so you had any?
Yeah, continue, of course. Yeah. Okay. So now you're back in Israel, and you're basically training in Wingate, and you're also training in Krav Maga. So how is your how is your experience with all this?
How was my experience?
Yeah.
So training in Krav Maga is interesting, especially working with Pavel Schreier. He's, by the way, if you're in Israel, look him up. Great instructor, probably one of the best instructors I've worked with. He's up there. Definitely, if you're looking to do Krav Maga or, do some striking, he's the guy. So I can talk about in general the approach of Krav Maga. I think we can discuss that, right? So what am I learning from Krav Maga? There's a lot of overlap. If we're going to look at it from a technique perspective,
Yeah.
there are.
Yeah, because I think I know this is moderated sovereign.
Hey Tom, you're sorry, you're turning into R2D2 right now. I can't hear you.
Have Krav Maga in.
Yeah, you're getting cut off as well.
Yeah.
You there?
Yeah, it's much better now. Yeah.
So, what was your question?
Yeah, so I mean, how would you describe your experience as you basically are studying in Wingate and also doing Krav Maga at the moment? How would you describe your experience?
So let's start with Wingate then. Wingate's a lot of fun. I'm studying sports science essentially, with martial arts coaching in mind. It's one of the requirements in order to be able to teach here, and it's just for me, it's for my own personal development. I feel that I need to, as a martial arts instructor, develop an understanding of how the body works and develop a better pedagogical knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to control a class, learning some best practices to better impart knowledge to students, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm getting to go to class with, other fight-minded people. And yeah, bad pun. There's a lot of MMA guys that are in my class that are looking to become MMA coaches, and it's interesting because nobody's heard of Arnis until I tell them, oh, you watch this movie, and like, yeah, I saw that movie. Yeah, I love the fight scenes. That was cool. Or I'll show them some videos, during our class breaks. So they think, they generally perceive me as the weapons guy.
All right. Okay.
I'm not going to talk about empty hand here, but
Okay.
it's a hot topic. But I'll talk about Muay Thai, and I think it's interesting because to become part of the culture, you kind of have to show that you know some stuff too. So I grappled with these guys, and I did some we did some Muay Thai sparring. I was landing my shots, and it was a good time. And there's this class camaraderie that's building up, because everyone's trying to build this network as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's organically growing. So two things. The Wingate Institute is helping me develop teaching skills, as a martial artist, and I think more martial arts instructors should study, these subjects, at least even on their own. Rather than just rely on the core, the core kata of their system. Like here's I'll give you an example. In a lot of places, all you need to teach a martial art is to open a business and get a license, get an insurance. In a lot of countries, okay. In some places, you don't even need that. Okay, you just go out and you train. But in order to be recognized as an instructor, you just have to be able to memorize or execute a bunch of techniques, and that's it. And then, to teach, you just have to go, okay, do this, do that, like this, like that. Basta ganyan.
Yeah.
As you know, basta ganyan lang yan. All right, and that doesn't make you a good instructor memorizing those techniques. What makes you a good instructor is being able to articulate, again, what we said earlier. Why does a technique exist? Scientifically, why do you execute it that way? Why are they used tactically in that fashion? That's it. So that's what I'm learning a lot in Wingate. Now, Krav Maga. So second part of your question. Learning with Pavel Schreier, great guy. He's he's originally a Krav Maga guy. So he started doing Krav Maga first, and then got into boxing, and if I recall correctly, and he moves like a boxer. That's how I describe his mechanics. He's a southpaw, so it's interesting learning from him. Because then he's really good at demonstrating stuff orthodox, but then
he goes southpaw.
Forget and then do southpaw, and then you're just like, okay, I gotta flip that. But you know what? Coming from a weapons background where you're working ambidextrously, it's not as hard. So I'm able to flip the image very quickly, but I'm sure other people would have a hard time. So that's a commentary on how he teaches, but it's interesting because I'm catching people with a lot of the setups he teaches me. So if we're talking about techniques purely, Pavel Schreier, there we go. Thanks, John. Really good techniques, really great technical setups that he's been showing me. But the real value isn't the technical setups; it's the mind, it's the stuff around it. Because he talks about self-defense not as okay, weapon goes like this, you go like that, and you punch. All right, hang on, we have a guest. Say hello.
Hello.
All right, can you go back to Ima? All right. So it's about the mindset. It's about the execution of the technique under the correct context.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's he talks about scanning your environment, knowing what I talked about.
Yeah, situational awareness.
Situational awareness. Now people keep talking about situational awareness. Iron Man. That's funny. Situational awareness, right? People keep talking about it, but don't really discuss it in depth. He does a really good job about it. Talks about the context in which when certain techniques work.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
And why they exist. So this is why I find his I would watch Krav Maga videos and be like, that's not gonna happen. Why on earth would I do that? That's nonsense, right? Me, a nice guy who's been doing it for 13 years, watches this and okay. Then we explain, okay, here's the context of the situation. You're in line at an ice cream shop.
Yeah.
And you're holding ice cream in one hand and you've got your kid in the other hand, right? And a guy charges in and starts stabbing people. Well, nothing in your life has prepared you for that moment. There's no setup for that. So you have to be able to quickly. One, you're gonna fall into your fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And no, even if you train that specific, scenario, you're in the ice cream shop with your kid. How often are you going to actually train for that specific environment, right? So, what do? There's a guy that's coming in stabbing people, and he decides he's going to stab you first. So that's where the surprise factor comes in, right? And that's why certain techniques exist.
Yeah.
And so that explanation was okay. That's sound to me, because a lot of the techniques that exist in a sterile environment are for duels or for multiple attackers, and usually it's at a different stage of the engagement, right? Yeah. So, and it has to do, Meditations on Violence. Read it. Rory Miller, he breaks down all the different types of fights.
That's a great book. I do have it. I've read it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he breaks down the different types of violence, from the monkey dance to the war.
Yeah.
And, each of those have unique techniques that apply to them, right? That apply in that context, because of the terrain, because of laws that are in place, because of what equipment you might have, So going back to the situation, without going too far off topic, let's get back to the ice cream and and you're holding your kid's hand at the ice cream shop. They were talking about this as a very real threat in Israel, because in 2016, I think it was 2016. It might be, it was 2016. There were knife attacks that were taking place in random places, supermarkets, wherever, places you don't expect.
There was one when I went to Israel. We were in Jerusalem by the Wailing Wall. There was somebody got stabbed. I think a father of 4, if I remember it right. So in the marketplace.
Right, and this is not an environment. You're not going into the most dangerous neighborhood where you could get shot, stabbed, or robbed. This is just in the marketplace. You're not in alert mode. You're with your kids.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why those techniques exist, and I understand them now.
Yeah.
But
I think it's really important that you understand the context as well.
Hang on a sec. Daniel.
I think your daddy duty. I think your daddy duty is about to start now, bro.
That's all right. So yeah, the context is what's important.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, especially when you talk about like the application of self-defense or what we do in application to self-defense, you need to understand the context as well. So
Right, and I find this is you know, when you watch a Krav Maga video, you know what? Not even Krav Maga. Watch videos in general. This is actually one of the greatest things about training with John. Because I was in college and I had a lot of free time. I would train with him and then we'd hang out and watch martial arts videos. Didn't matter what it was. It would be like some Tai Chi video. It would be we'd watch UFC fights. We'd watch, self-defense videos. We'd watch, Eric Paulson's combat submission wrestling.
combat submission, yeah.
Yeah. We'd watch it. And we'd break down and analyze all the mechanics and the movements and why they work and in what context they work. These instructional videos would show things and he explained to me, okay, well, why did that work? Or why won't this work in this particular context? And I think one of the benefits of working with John was, in this method of study it was not about the style anymore as much as it was style agnostic. You were looking at movement as a whole.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, everything boils down to it in the end, actually.
Movement as a whole is really important. The techniques of Piper, in what context do they work?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not for dueling. I've tried sparring with them, and once they see the knife, your success rate goes down.
It's really more for ambush.
You have to be ambushing the guy. Actually, there were techniques that worked, but you had success rates lower. I was resorting to other technique sets, but there were some techniques that really worked, like the what we call the advanced twirl, where I was defending a low line thrust. But that's what it was made for. So Krav Maga. In general, when here's a tip for everybody. When you're watching martial arts moves, look at the why and not just the technique itself.
It's really important. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Because it's one of the things that mostly not a lot of people actually look for, the context behind the video, and this is where this is where basically you see a lot of arguments starting from.
Yeah. Well, that's where a lot of the arguments start, and you're like, yeah, but you're not getting the context, bro.
Exactly.
Why on earth is he? Why are they slowing this down? Why are they speeding it up?
That's true.
When you're thinking about timing and mechanics, if you're trying to improve, you got to move slower.
True.
That's why Tai Chi exists.
Very true. Very true. Okay. I don't think we've got any more questions from our audience. Okay. Well, John mentioned planchador. Yeah, that's gonna be my next thing after the
You're gonna iron.
Yeah, I'll be in my Iron Man mode. Okay. Well, I don't know if not a lot of people may not actually have caught Dean's announcement. Was it early this month or last week of October? Angelo is basically one of the moderators of FMA Discussion now, and I would like to welcome you to the team. Okay. And I'm looking forward to working with you, doing interviews with you, and basically maybe planning some things or stuff for FMA discussion.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely. I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm a very intellectually curious guy, and I'm looking forward to meeting people who are experts in their respective fields and learning more about it. And learning with everybody too. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, it's with the short amount of time still that I've got interviewing a lot of people. I basically um, it was an honor and a pleasure, a privilege to also to meet all these FMA instructors. It doesn't matter how known they are for me, but a lot of the guests that we have are basically gems in their own right. So they have actually managed to contribute to FMA wherever they are. So this is one of the things that I like with these interviews.
Oh yeah, no, they're a lot of fun. I try to watch them when I can, and I get to be part of it now. So that's gonna be pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Looking forward to doing your own interviews, man.
Yeah, I've got a few. We've talked about this. I've got a
Yeah,
couple people in mind already.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, yep. On that note, welcome to the FMA discussion moderators team.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, guys, please remember um, next week Brian Rodriguez is going to have a special episode for the veterans. So that's going to be on November 11. There are already some flyers that we posted, and also we're going to have a Christmas raffle, which is going to happen on the 12th of December. It's going to be $5 per ticket, and Dean has also posted some of the donors. Okay, so I think you've got some lessons from various people, and you got a trainer as well from Brian Rodriguez. So please support this raffle because all the proceeds will go to a charity in the Philippines. We're going to elect a charity that is going to be helping kids, or basically are working with kids at the moment. So yeah, please support them. Okay. Um, if you don't have any more, very welcome, Gregory. I hope you enjoyed it. Uh, thank you very much, Angelo, for being my guest for this afternoon.
No problem.
And looking forward for you to be anchoring your own interviews in the future.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Have a great
Yeah.
evening.
All right. See ya. Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye. Okay, so there you go, folks. That was Angelo Garcia, one of the new moderators of FMA Discussion. Yep, he practices lighting scientific as just like me, just like myself, and we are looking forward, okay, to doing more stuff for FMA Discussion in the coming months. So again, please remember November 11, a special episode for the veterans by Brian Rodriguez, and the raffle that we are going to do in December. See you later for the interview with Joseph of Rapido Realissimo Cali.